हेलो,
आवाज कैसे?
आवाज आ
नहीं,
अ,
अब अभी दोबारा बोले।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, आई एम
हाँ,
डॉक्टर रुकैया
आप सही।
शाहिद.
ओके।
Okay, so today we are going to do pathology of the adrenal gland. So adrenal gland are these are paired glands that are located above the kidneys, and uh, uh, this is the histology of the adrenal gland. It is composed of a cortex and a medulla. The cortex has three portions. It has the first one is the zona is called the zona glomerulosa. The second one, which forms the main mass of the adrenal cortex, is the fasciculata. The third one is the reticularis. So cortex and medulla, and the cortex is divided into fasciculata, reticularis. Sorry, glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. So the outermost layer is that of glomerulosa, which secretes the mineralocorticoids. Mineralocorticoids are basically aldosterones. Then intervening is a broad zone of fasciculata, which makes up about 75% of the total cortex, and it secretes glucocorticoids. Then the third and the innermost layer is the zona reticularis, which abuts the medulla and secretes the steroids, sex steroids. Okay, so cortex, it secretes three hormones, which are aldosterone from the outermost zona glomerulosa. Then it secretes glucocorticoids from the fasciculata, which is the middle part, and reticularis. From reticularis, it secretes the sex steroids. And then the second part of the adrenal gland is the adrenal medulla, which is composed of the chromaffin cells, which secrete catecholamines, which are epinephrine most of the part and norepinephrine. So there are three hormones secreted: mineralocorticoid from the outermost glomerulosa, then fasciculata, which secretes the glucocorticoids, and reticularis, which secretes the sex hormones. Then from the medulla, chromaffin cells are present, which secrete the epinephrine. Okay, so we have done this. There are three basic types of looking at the adrenal glands, as there are three types of hormones. There can be uh, b- uh, uh, there can be three basic types of hyperadrenal syndromes. So first one is the Cushing syndrome, which is characterized by the excess of cortisol. Then second is hyperaldosteronism, and the third is adrenogenital or virilizing syndrome caused by excess of androgen. So adrenocortical hyperfunction. The first one, we will come to the first one, which is hypercortisolism or Cushing syndrome. Cushing syndrome is characterized by excess secretion of the cortisol or the glucocorticoids. So Cushing syndrome can be broadly divided into two basic causes. The first one is the exogenous cause, and the second one are the endogenous causes. The vast majority of Cushing's excess glucocorticoids or excess cortisol are exogenous administration of uh, steroids or glucocorticoids, which is called iatrogenic Cushing syndrome. We have seen that there are a number of quacks and quacks sitting in places. They give glucocorticoids with, and it is common practice in Pakistan that these quacks prescribe glucocorticoids to people because they have an anti-inflammatory effect. So the symptoms of any disease in the patient are masked or suppressed. So there's a common practice to give exogenous glucocorticoids. And glucocorticoids can also be, doctors prescribe glucocorticoids in conditions like chronic inflammatory conditions like autoimmune diseases, like rheumatoid arthritis, or chronic inflammatory conditions. So the first and the most important cause of hypercortisolism or Cushing syndrome is the iatrogenic administration of glucocorticoids or steroids. Then endogenous causes can be either due to it can be either due to can be either ACTH dependent or ACTH independent. As we know, there is a hypothalamic, pituitary, and adrenal axis. So the hypothalamus secretes cortisol releasing hormone, which acts on the anterior pituitary, and from the anterior pituitary, ACTH is released, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone. This ACTH acts on the adrenal gland and mostly on the secretion of on the secretion of glucocorticoids and sex hormones. Uh, mineralocorticoids are regulated by renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. So, a cause of the causes of Cushing syndrome can be in endogenous causes of Cushing syndrome can be ACTH dependent, which are because of the excess secretion of ACTH, and they can be ACTH independent, which are not related to ACTH. So ACTH dependent causes can be primarily excess ACTH secretion from the pituitary gland. Pituitary adenoma pituitary adenoma, as we know, it can secrete a number of hormones, ACTH being one of them. Then ACTH can be secondarily excess in amount due to CRH dependent hyperplasia, or a lesion in the hypothalamus, or a cause in the hypothalamus which is secreting excess cortisol releasing hormone, which acts on the pituitary, causing hypersecretion of ACTH. So then ectopic corticotrophin syndrome can be due to ACTH can either be excessively produced from the pituitary gland, or it can be from any other from any tumor. Like most common of these are pulmonary small cell carcinomas, small cell lung carcinomas, or bronchial carcinoid, which secrete ACTH like peptides. So these ACTH like peptides, they act on the adrenal gland and function like ACTH to produce excess amount of cortisol from the adrenal gland and sex hormones. So ACTH dependent causes are basically two. One can be related to pituitary and the hypothalamus. The second is related to paraneoplastic syndrome, which is excess ACTH secretion from any tumors in the body. Then coming to the ACTH independent causes means these causes are not related to ACTH, and they mostly are primarily located in the adrenal gland themselves. So adrenal gland can hyper secrete glucocorticoids. They can be two major causes are present. These are adrenal adenoma, then adrenal carcinoma. Usually there's a 50% incidence of both the adrenal adenoma and carcinoma. So a tumor in the adrenal gland can be an adenoma or a carcinoma, which is secreting cortisol. Then there's a condition which is called macronodular hyperplasia, which is ectopic secretion of hormone receptors, including GIPR, LHR, and vasopressin and serotonin receptors. Then primary pigmented nodular adrenal gland disease and McCune-Albright syndrome. These are rare causes of excess secretion of cortisol. So Cushing syndrome was mostly seen in middle-aged female patients. 3 times females are more affected than males. And so briefly summarizing the causes, there can be 4 causes: adrenal adenoma, which secrete ACTH, adrenal tumors which secrete cortisol, ectopic production of ACTH from small cell lung carcinoma or other tumors, then iatrogenic Cushing syndrome, which comprise the majority of the causes, and it is iatrogenic intake of steroids or glucocorticoids. Then coming to these one by one. Pituitary adenoma which secretes ACTH. So when pituitary adenoma secretes ACTH, it forms the 60 to 70% cases of pathological endogenous hypercortisolism. We have seen that most of the cases of Cushing syndrome are due to intake of glucocorticoids, iatrogenic. Then endogenous the most common cause is pituitary adenoma, and pituitary adenoma secretes ACTH, which acts on the adrenal glands, which become hyperplastic and secrete excess amount of cortisol. Or when analyzing these, biochemically, there's obviously all the causes of Cushing syndrome, they have excess of cortisol. In pituitary adenoma, there will be increased ACTH. So the second cause is adrenal tumors. In 22 which secrete cortisol. In 20 to 25% of the cases, they found 20 to 25% of cases of Cushing syndrome, and there can be equal amount of it is usually an equal incidence of adenoma and carcinoma. So when there's an adrenal tumor, there's it can be visualized on radiology or MRI of the patient, and it causes atrophy of the contralateral gland. So we can see a large like a nodule in the adrenal gland, and the rest of the areas of the gland are atrophic. On biochemistry, there is excess cortisol and there is low ACTH, because ACTH is suppressed due to excessive cortisol. Now, coming to the third cause is ectopic production of ACTH by the tumors, which there can be a number of cancers. Most important of these is lung cancer, which is small cell lung carcinoma of the lung. Then other cancers like bronchial and thymic carcinoids, medullary thyroid carcinoma, and islet cell cancers. They comprise 10 to 15% of cases. In these, as there's excess ACTH, adrenals are hyperplastic, and there's increased ACTH and cortisol both. In iatrogenic Cushing syndrome, which is the commonest cause, due to long-term steroid therapy, can be due to connective tissue disorders or asthma or rheumatoid arthritis or cancer or transplant rejection. On biochemical examination, there's high cortisol and ACTH is suppressed. So laboratory diagnosis of Cushing syndrome is based on, first and foremost, is there is excess cortisol levels, and in cortisol levels there is there's a urine test which is called free cortisol level. So there is increased 24 hours urine free cortisol level, and then there is loss of normal diurnal pattern of cortisol. There's excess of cortisol secretion normally in the body during the daytime and in the evening, whereas when there is Cushing syndrome, there's loss of this diurnal pattern. So in the basic diagnosis of Cushing syndrome rests on the excess cortisol secretion in the urine and in the blood, and then the cause of the Cushing's, whether it is ACTH dependent or ACTH independent, it depends upon the measurement of ACTH. So if the ACTH is increased, then there is another test which is done, which is called dexamethasone suppression test. So in dexamethasone suppression test, there is administration of there's measurement of urinary steroid excretion. 17 corticosteroids is measured in this test, and dexamethasone or glucocorticoid is administered, and this usually suppresses the ACTH. So in pituitary Cushing syndrome, ACTH levels are elevated and cannot be suppressed by administration of low dose of dexamethasone. However, when high dose of dexamethasone is given, the pituitary responds by reducing ACTH secretion. This is reflected by suppression of urinary steroid secretions. So in pituitary Cushing's, there is excess of cortisol level, there is excess of ACTH level, and dexamethasone suppression test is positive when high dose dexamethasone is given. In ectopic ACTH secretion, there's an elevated level of ACTH, and it is insensitive. There is negative suppression test on high or low dose of exogenous dexamethasone. And when Cushing syndrome is caused by an adrenal tumor, ACTH level is low, and there's excess of cortisol, but the ACTH level is low, which is because of the feedback inhibition of the pituitary gland. As with ectopic ACTH secretion, both low and dose of dexamethasone fail to suppress cortisol excretion. So clinical findings in Cushing syndrome are they occur as a consequence of excess plasma glucocorticoid levels. So when the cortisol levels are excessive, there is excess deposition of there's excess of fat in the body, which results in truncal obesity, buffalo hump, moon face due to fat deposition. Then there is hypertension, there's hirsutism due to increased testosterone, and there's muscle weakness and breakdown. Menstrual irregularities are present, osteoporosis are present due to decreased calcium absorption, increased bone resorption, and suppression of bone formation. Then there's, due to excess glucocorticoids, there's impaired glucose tolerance and secondary diabetes mellitus due to insulin resistance. Then abdominal striae due to inhibition of protein synthesis and abnormal collagen maturation is present. Because and mental symptoms are common, such as depression and psychosis. So Cushing's, the signs and symptoms of Cushing syndrome are, you can see there's thinning of the hair, there's moon faces and ruddy complexion, then there's hirsutism, there's truncal obesity, pendulous abdominal striae, thinning of the pubic hair, and uh, pubic and axillary hair in the woman. Then there's ecchymosis, there's impaired wound healing and impaired immune response, and secondary infections are common. Then there's thin fragile skin with multiple uh, with with bruises. Then there's thinning of the muscles and muscle wasting in the extremities, and muscle weakness and myalgias are common. Then there's osteoporosis, and bone pains are common. Then supraclavicular fat pad and buffalo hump are present. Then there are mood swings, insomnia, and loss of libido. So it can be learned with this mnemonic: Swedish. There's spinal tenderness, there's weight gain, there's easy bruise, diabetes, intracapsular fat pads, striae, and hypertension. So this is an adrenal adenoma, which can which may secrete either cortisol or mineralocorticoids or glucocorticoids or sex hormones, and resulting in excess secretion of either of these. So adenomas can be functional and they can be non-functional. So this is a picture of hyperplasia of the adrenal gland. Compare it with the normal adrenal gland. Normal adrenal gland is like this. You can see the cortex and the medulla, whereas in the hyperplasia of the adrenal gland, you can see there is hyperplasia of most of the adrenal cortex. Medulla can still be seen here. So hyperplasia of the adrenal cortex usually results from excess ACTH, which can be uh, which is due to excess, which can be due to pituitary adenoma or cortisone releasing hormone tumor in the hypothalamus, or it can be due to um, ACTH peptides released from cancers or lung tumors. Then primary hyperaldosteronism. Hyperaldosteronism means there is excess secretion of aldosterone. So we are going to see the causes of hyperaldosteronism. So it is a generic term for a group of closely related conditions characterized by chronic excess aldosterone secretion. So in hyperaldosteronism, the most common cause is idiopathic hyperaldosteronism. So as we know that aldosterone hormone is regulated by renin-angiotensin system. So when there is hypotension, renin hormone is released from the kidney, and it it helps in production of angiotensin, which then acts on the cortex and causes secretion of aldosterone. So in primarily aldosteronism, so there are basically two main causes of hyperaldosteronism. They can be primary and secondary. So we are doing the primary hyperaldosteronism first. So the most common cause of primary hyperaldosteronism is idiopathic hyperaldosteronism. So idiopathic hyperaldosteronism has genetic causes to it. Then there can be, the second most common cause is an adenoma, adenoma. Uh, then the rare causes can be glucocorticoid suppressible ACTH. Okay, so all these primary hyperaldosteronism, they cause excess secretion of aldosterone. So coming to the normal function of the aldosterone, what does aldosterone do? Normal function of aldosterone is to absorb sodium from the renal tubules and uh, and uh, absorb it in from the tubules into the blood, and in exchange for this it secretes potassium and hydrogen ions into the renal tubules. So aldosterone causes sodium absorption and potassium and hydrogen excretion into the renal tubules. So excess of aldosterone will cause excess of sodium absorption, and this sodium will and water will be passively absorbed with the sodium. So there will be excess sodium, there will be water retention, then this will lead to hypertension and hypernatremia. Potassium will be lost excessively, so there will be hypokalemia. Then hydrogen will be lost, so there will be loss of hydrogen ions, which will result in alkalosis. So aldosteronism, hyperaldosteronism will result in hypertension, will result in hypokalemia and alkalosis. So primary hyperaldosteronism, as we see, there are three causes: idiopathic, adenoma, and ACTH, glucocorticoid suppressible excess secretion. Okay, we'll come to these one by one. The first one is idiopathic hyperaldosteronism. Hyperaldosteronism may be primary or it may be secondary to an extraadrenal cause. Primary, okay, we have done this. So there are three causes: bilateral idiopathic hyperaldosteronism, adrenal cortical neoplasm, and glucocorticoid remediable hyperaldosteronism. So coming to these one by one, bilateral idiopathic hyperaldosteronism, or IHA. It is characterized by bilateral nodular hyperplasia of the adrenal glands, is the most common cause of primary hyperaldosteronism, accounting for about 60% of cases. So individuals with IHA tend to be older and have less severe hypertension than those presenting with adrenal neoplasms. So there's a genetic mutation which is responsible for bilateral idiopathic hyperaldosteronism. This mutation is in the gene KCNJ5, which encodes a potassium channel. So the first one is idiopathic hyperaldosteronism, which is caused by a mutation in KCNJ5 gene, and it results in bilateral nodular hyperplasia of the adrenal glands, and is the most common cause of primary hyperaldosteronism. Okay, then coming to the second one, adrenocortical neoplasm, which can be an adenoma or a carcinoma, but most of the times it's an adenoma, and this aldosterone secreting adenoma, it results in hyperaldosteronism, and the condition is called Conn's syndrome. This syndrome occurs most frequently in the adult middle life and is more common in women than in males. Multiple adenomas may be present in occasional patients. And the third cause is glucocorticoid remediable hyperaldosteronism. In this, there is it's an uncommon cause of primary familial hyperaldosteronism. So there's a fusion of the gene. Again, there's a genetic mutation in this case, and there's a fusion of the gene CYP11B1, which codes for hydroxylase gene, and CYP11B2 gene, which codes for the aldosterone synthesis. So the two genes, one for the aldosterone and the other for the glucocorticoids, they fuse together on chromosome 8. So this results in a chimeric gene or a fusion gene, and which in this case, this excess hyperaldosteronism is linked to the excess secretion of cortisol, and this leads to sustained production of hybrid steroids in both to both the aldosterone and cortisol. The activation of aldosterone secretion is under the influence of ACTH, and hence it is suppressible by exogenous administration of dexamethasone. Therefore, it is called glucocorticoid remediable hyperaldosteronism. Then, in primary hyperaldosteronism, the three causes we have seen, and then there is excess of mineralocorticoids or aldosterone. Then due to excess of mineralocorticoids, there is suppression because of the primary cause is present in the adrenal gland itself. So there's excess of mineralocorticoid, and there is low level of renin and angiotensin, and ACTH is also low. In primary in the first two cases. The primary hyperaldosteronism has an estimated prevalence of 5 to 10% in hypertensive patients. So, if patient exhibits hypokalemia, alkalosis, low renin, and hypertension, low potassium is likely to cause muscle weakness and even paralysis. So, as we've seen here in this picture, uh, hyperaldosteronism is going to cause hypernatremia, and will lead to hypertension. Then excess potassium loss will cause hypokalemia. Because of hypokalemia, there will be muscle weakness and may even cause paralysis. So we do not give these patients diuretics which further lower the potassium levels, which can be very harmful. Then due to excess secretion of hydrogen ions, there will be alkalosis in these patients. Okay, there will be alkalosis and there will be low renin. In secondary, now coming to the secondary aldosteronism. In secondary aldosteronism, the cause is not located in the adrenal glands. In secondary aldosteronism, in contrast to aldosterone release, occurs in response to activation of renin-angiotensin system. So in secondary aldosteronism, there will be excess of aldosterone, there will be high levels of renin and angiotensin hormones as well. It is characterized by increased plasma levels of renin, and it can be seen in conditions like decreased renal perfusion, which can be seen in arteriolar nephrosclerosis and renal artery stenosis. Then it can be seen in arterial hypovolemia and edema, which can be secondary to congestive cardiac failure or cirrhosis or nephrotic syndrome. All these conditions leads to hypovolemia and activation of renin-angiotensin system. Then in pregnancy, secondary hypoaldosteronism can occur due to estrogen-induced increase in plasma renin substrate. So all these conditions will lead to secondary hyperaldosteronism. Then coming to the hypofunction of the adrenal cortex. Hypofunction of the adrenal cortex can have primary causes or can have secondary causes. Hypofunction means there will be low levels of mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and sex hormones. Then the primary causes of hypofunction of adrenal cortex can be loss of cortex, which can be secondary to autoimmune diseases, bacterial infections in the adrenal cortex, hemorrhage, amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, hemochromatosis, metastatic disease, and surgical ablation of the adrenal cortex. Then it can be secondary to metabolic failure, which can be primary failure of the adrenal glands or drug-induced inhibition of adrenocortical function. So coming to these one by one, the secondary causes of hypofunction can be related to hypothalamic or pituitary diseases, in which there is a failure of the hypothalamus and pituitary gland to secrete releasing hormone into the blood, leading to failure of the adrenal gland. There can be neoplasms or infections affecting the hypothalamic and pituitary axis, which causes suppression of suppression of the releasing hormones and low secretion of affecting the adrenal glands. Okay, then long-term steroid administration, as we saw earlier, like iatrogenic glucocorticoids, it suppresses this hypothalamic pituitary axis, and there are low levels of ACTH, and there's secondary suppression of the adrenal cortex, and sudden withdrawal of this steroid administration can precipitate adrenal failure. So adrenocortical insufficiency or hypoadrenocorticism. It can be chronic insufficiency of the adrenal gland, and it can be acute primary adrenal insufficiency. Acute primary adrenal insufficiency can be precipitated by stress in a patient with Addison's disease. So chronic insufficiency is called Addison's disease. uh, acute adrenal insufficiency can be either predisposed on the Addison's disease, or it can be precipitated by withdrawal of steroids in an adrenolectomized patient. It can also be seen in patients with acute bilateral hemorrhagic necrosis of the adrenal gland, which is called Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome. What happens in Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome? The patient is affected by meningococcus bacteria. So this meningococcus patient may have meningococcal septicemia, means there are meningococci present in the bloodstream, which seed into the adrenal cortex. And less commonly, other bacterial organisms like staphylococcal, pneumococcus, or Haemophilus influenza can play this role. Then this can also be seen in sepsis, and it may also be seen in newborns with perinatal trauma. Then can be seen secondary to disseminated intravascular coagulation. The picture is that there is acute necrosis and acute failure of the adrenal gland. So adrenal glands are hemorrhagic with necrosis of the cortex. So as the name indicates, there is acute necrosis, hemorrhagic necrosis of the adrenal glands due to either infections or DIC or trauma or any other cause. There's acute hemorrhagic necrosis of the cortex with acute hyposecretion of the adrenal cortical hormones. Then because of the meningococcal septicemia, there is purpuric rash all over the body. Then there is vascular collapse. Vascular collapse is due to very low levels of mineralocorticoids then the shock can also be superimposed due to endotoxins which are produced by the bacteria themselves. Then there is vomiting and decreased steroids and sodium levels. So basically, aldosterones are low, the glucocorticoids are low, sex hormones are low. Sex hormones, they do not manifest in the acute stage. The acute condition is mostly due to decreased steroids and decreased sodium levels. Very low sodium levels lead to dehydration and hypotension. There's increased potassium in the blood and dehydration. So this is a picture of the Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome. This is the adrenal glands. So what we see here is the acute hemorrhagic necrosis of the adrenal gland. So this is the adrenal cortex. We can see there is hemorrhage present in the parenchyma, and the cells are still visible, but as the time will pass on, these cells will undergo necrosis. So there will be loss of adrenal cortical cells. Then this is a purpuric rash that is present in a baby with Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome secondary to meningococcal septicemia. Primary cortical adrenal insufficiency. Now, primary chronic adrenal insufficiency. So this was the acute, which is called Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome. Now, secondary chronic adrenal insufficiency is called Addison's disease. Addison's disease in 60 to 75% of the cases is due to autoimmune destruction of adrenal cortex with lymphocytic and plasma cell infiltrate. Normal medulla is normal. It can be secondary to infections such as TB. More than 90% of the cortex needs to be destroyed before chronic insufficiency of the adrenal glands or Addison's disease manifests itself. So it is characterized by low levels of aldosterone, low levels of glucocorticoids. So there is lethargy and low levels of sex hormones. So there is lethargy, there's muscle weakness due to low sodium levels and excess potassium. There's anorexia, nausea, vomiting, weight loss, and hypotension. There is hyperpigmentation of the skin and mucous membranes in Addison's disease. So there is hyperpigmentation of the mucous membranes. Primary is due to adrenal insufficiency, should be suspected when there is marked skin pigmentation due to high ACTH levels. So there is a hormone which is called primary pro-opiomelanocorticoid cortical hormone, which is related to melanin production, which causes melanin production, and it is also secreted from the anterior pituitary. So excess ACTH, when there's excess ACTH secretion, POMC levels are also increased. So in primary adrenal failure or adrenal insufficiency, when the adrenal glands are not functioning, there will be excess ACTH levels. So this excess ACTH levels will also cause excess POMC level or melanocorticotrophic levels, which will lead to excess production of melanin pigment and pigmentation of the mucous membranes and skin. In secondary adrenal insufficiency, which is related to pituitary and hypothalamic failures, it does not have excess ACTH and excess POMC, so there is no skin pigmentation. So coming to the causes of Addison's disease one by one. So chronic adrenal insufficiency or adrenal disease, the most important and the foremost cause is autoimmune. There is autoimmune destruction of the adrenal cortex, and there are anti-adrenal antibodies present. So there are two types of autoimmune Addison's disease exist. The first one in the first one, there is Addison's disease and hypoparathyroidism as well, and mucocutaneous candidiasis. This is due to mutation in AIRE gene, which regulates T cell tolerance to peripheral tissue antigens in the thymus. So in the first type of autoimmune disease, there is dysregulation of of the T cells because of mutation in the AIRE gene. What does AIRE gene do? It functions in the thymus. In thymus, the T cells that are acting against the self antigens, they are destroyed. So AIRE, it positively helps in destruction of autoimmune T cells. So there is in this autoimmune disease, there is mutation in the AIRE gene. So T cells escape this tolerance process, and then they cause autoimmune destruction of adrenal gland, of the pituitary, which leads to Addison's disease, to hypoparathyroidism, and to mucocutaneous candidiasis, because T cells are also important in the eradication of fungal infections. So when the T cells are not there, so there is mucocutaneous candidiasis. Now coming to the type 2 of autoimmune Addison's disease, this is called Schmidt syndrome. In here there is Addison syndrome, there's autoimmune thyroid diseases, and there is insulin dependent diabetes. So this is a set of autoimmune diseases. There is no candidiasis or parathyroid hormone deficiency. It is associated with HLA-A1 and HLA-B8 haplotypes. Sorry. Then other causes can be tuberculosis, which results in chronic seeding of the adrenal cortex by the tubercle bacilli and formation of granulomas and chronic inflammatory condition, leading to failure of the adrenal cortex. Then other causes which can cause failure of the adrenal cortex are histoplasmosis, amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, metastatic carcinoma, congenital hypoplasia, hemochromatosis, CMV infection in AIDS, and adrenal leukodystrophy. All these conditions, they destroy the adrenal gland and causing failure of the adrenal gland and Addison's disease. So this is a picture of the carcinoma, metastatic carcinoma involving the adrenal cortex. As you can see, multiple nodules of carcinoma present in the adrenal gland. So this is again carcinoma. This results in this is the adrenal gland, some part of normal adrenal gland, which you can see yellow, whereas the rest is the carcinoma, which is involving the adrenal gland. Then in autoimmune adrenalitis, you can see there are a number of autoimmune or T cells which are destroying the adrenal cortical cells. So uh, there may be a lymphocytic infiltrate or burned out fibrotic appearance. Medulla is untouched. In TB, evidence for TB is usually present. So signs and symptoms of adrenal sorry. So signs and symptoms of adrenal of Addison's disease are the signs are weight loss. There's hyperpigmentation. There is hypotension. There is thinning of axillary and pubic hair. Then there is due to decreased sex hormones. Then there is vitiligo. Symptoms are fatigue, lassitude, malaise, weakness, and anorexia. There's postural dizziness and syncope due to hypotension. Then their gastrointestinal symptoms are present, which are nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and constipation. Then myalgias, arthralgias, and rarely reflex contractions are present, decreased libido, and amenorrhea. Coming to the adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla, it is composed of chromaffin cells which secrete mostly epinephrine or adrenaline. A small percentage of norepinephrine or noradrenaline is produced, but mostly epinephrine is converted into norepinephrine in the peripheral tissues. The only diseases are two tumors which may arise here or at the other chromaffin masses. So this is called pheochromocytoma, and the second is called neuroblastoma, which is poorly differentiated, which is present in children. Pheochromocytoma is a tumor arising from the chromaffin cells. It is well differentiated and it present in adults. And pheochromocytoma, so in the body there are a number of chromaffin cells distributed throughout, forming a network of neuroendocrine cells. And when the pheochromocytoma, this tumor is located anywhere other than the adrenal gland, it is called paraganglioma. So basically paraganglioma and pheochromocytoma are the same, but pheochromocytoma is when the tumor is present in the adrenal medulla, and paraganglioma when it is present anywhere else in the body. So pheochromocytoma neoplasms composed of chromaffin cells synthesize and release catecholamines, a rare cause of surgically corrected hypertension. So there's a rule of tens for the pheochromocytoma. So 10% of the pheochromocytomas are extra-adrenal when they are called paragangliomas. 10% are bilateral, 10% are malignant, and 10% are not associated with hypertension. It is now recognized that 25% of the individuals with paraganglioma and pheochromocytoma harbor mutations in a number of genes, which are RET, NF1, VHL, SDHL, SDHC, SDHB, and SDHD genes. So this is a pheochromocytoma. As you can see, the yellow cortex is present as a thin rim on the outer side, and medulla is involved by the tumor. Now, this is a microscopic picture of pheochromocytoma. So there are these cells, nests of cells in a Zell-Ballen pattern. They form a nest of cells and of these enterochromaffin cells, and the periphery is formed by the sustentacular or supporting cells. So these are the sustentacular cells, whereas the most of these cells are the chromaffin cells. So these are the granules in these cells which secrete catecholamines. So there is no histologic behavior that reliably predicts clinical behavior. The definite diagnosis of malignancy for pheochromocytoma is based upon presence of metastasis. So metastasis may involve lymph nodes, liver, lung, or bone. So hypertension is the most important clinical presentation. Paroxysmal episodes of hypertension are present. Means there is an abrupt elevation of blood pressure associated with tachycardia, palpitations, headache, sweating, tremors, and apprehension. This is because of release of excess amount of epinephrine. So all these symptoms are due to epinephrine, which causes contraction of the blood vessels, increased hypertension, which causes increased heart rate, leading to tachycardia, palpitations, and sweating, tremors, and apprehension. Which epinephrine basically causes a fight or flight reaction. So there's pain in the abdomen, chest, nausea, vomiting, etc. So pheochromocytomas can cause congestive cardiac failure. Then they can also lead to pulmonary edema, myocardial infarction, secondary to tachycardias, and decreased blood supply to the heart itself. Then it can lead to ventricular fibrillation and cerebrovascular accidents. In the laboratory diagnosis of pheochromocytoma, there's excess secretion of catecholamines and their metabolites, which is vanillyl mandelic acid and metanephrines. Treatment is surgical excision and adrenergic blocking agents to prevent hypertensive crisis. Multifocal lesions require long-term medical treatment for hypertension. Thank you. Okay, there was a question here somewhere. Hello? If there are any questions, you can write the questions and let me know, please. Excuse me? यहाँ पे पार्टिसिपेंट का एक क्वेश्चन आया था, वो कैसे पता चलेगा? ये तो कोई भी क्वेश्चन नहीं है. एक क्वेश्चन किया था स्टूडेंट ने. हाँ, वो तो मैंने कह दिया. If there are any questions, please you may write the questions in the text. उसने दिया था एक क्वेश्चन, लेकिन शायद उसने हैंड रेज किया था.
जी डॉक्टर भाई एंड करें.
कोई क्वेश्चंस है तो प्लीज.
ये देखें मोड का ऑप्शन आ रहा होगा ना आपके पास.
हाँ, वो तो मैंने देख लिया, उसमें कोई क्वेश्चंस
नहीं
है
अभी
नहीं.
कुछ भी नहीं है मैडम.
ठीक है, चलें. थैंक यू सो मच.
चलें ओके अल्लाह हाफिज.
थैंक यू सो मच. आपने एक्स्ट्रा जाके हेल्प किया आउट ऑफ द वे.
कोई बात नहीं.
बहुत बहुत जज़ाकल्लाह. अल्लाह हाफिज.